I'm back. Sorry, it took me a few minutes to type all of that back in for the title. Oh, here we go. Now I can see Peacified, Christy. Hi. Welcome to the Scope. It's good to have you here. Where are you guys from? And also let me know if you can hear me okay. Christy still there? Passy, are you still? I can hear you perfect. Thank you so much, Peacified. Great. So while we're waiting for others to join, if this is your first time on Scope with me, I will just tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do real quick. I am Miss Kimberly. Well, at Miss Kimberly is my handle. My name is Kimberly Rice Ogletree. I am a success coach. Thank you. I'm a success coach, a speaker, professional speaker, author, mentor to teenage girls and women, and also a healthy, wealthy lifestyle coach with total life changes. So helping people lose weight and make money doing it. Those are just several of my titles, but the basis for everything that I do is built around helping young girls and women build and maintain a healthy level of self-esteem. So any topic that kind of hits on that area, which a lot of things you'll hear me talk about here on Scope have to do with building and maintaining a healthy level of self-esteem in young girls and women. That is my platform, always has been. Want to see people healthy and whole with a healthy level of self-esteem. Oh, great. Thanks for following. I really appreciate that. So yeah, when I speak from the stage, the books that I've written, I'll circle back around to that, just building and maintaining that healthy level of self-esteem. I help people to figure things out, you know, in my coaching, in my mentoring, those things that will help women and girls to feel excellent about themselves and to go out there and make an impact in the world, and to maintaining and having that healthy level of self-esteem is essential to success. So that is my platform. Okay. So our topic tonight is, if abuse knocked at your door, would you recognize it? Thank you so much for the hearts. I really appreciate that. If abuse knocked at your door, would you recognize it? So I'm going to go over, share a little bit of my testimony, and also share with you a lot of signs and ways to recognize and tell if you are in an abusive relationship or experiencing some type of abuse. Okay? So I have my cheat sheets here too, because I don't want to forget a thing. It's a lot to talk about, and but I do, I would appreciate your comments and your feedback that you have on the subject as well. Appreciate those hearts so much. So knowing the signs. So domestic violence is often more than just physical abuse. It encompasses sexual, emotional, economic, and psychological violence. Initially, identifying the signs of an abusive relationship can be difficult, especially if the abuser uses subtle tactics to gain power and control. It is very common for survivors to recognize the beginning of the abuse as the first time the abuser hits them. But really, the cycle of violence may have started early on in the relationship. So, a lot of times we think of abuse as physical. When I hear about domestic violence, or that word comes up, that would probably be the first thing that would come to my mind, is physical violence. Right. And, oh, that's so sad. I hate that. I hate it with a passion. But the first thing we think about is being hit. We don't always think about, the emotional side of it, the psychological side of it. We just don't. we think about people being hit. And for me, I had to, that was my view of it. And I really had to redefine what abuse was, because of a situation that I had gone through. I had always said, as long as somebody didn't hit me or put their hands on me, that, I'm good. But abuse can be far more than just physical. So for me, I just always looked at it that way. It was always, somebody, as long as you don't hit me, I'm cool. But what I learned over, in the last relationship that I was in, which was a 9-year relationship, in marriage, 9-year relationship, total years in marriage. But, what I learned through that whole experience was that, there was so much more to abuse. For my friend, she had her best friend messed her up in the head, and and the whole psychological piece of this, and the emotional side of this, man, it's almost as if you are taking that physical blow, because it goes deep. And that's why I want to talk about recognizing the signs beyond the physical signs of abuse, because the emotional and psychological abuse and things like that are not things that you would see with your physical eye. You can't tell somebody is being abused in that way unless they share that with you. You don't see a black eye. You don't see bruises on them. It's all internal. So, I went through, and I'm being very transparent, I went through a situation where I was being emotionally and psychologically abused. And I was not recognizing it because I always in my mind thought of abuse as physical, and it was a whole control issue. It's all about control, and fear tactics and things of such. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I will, but I'll come back and interject pieces of my experience in this so that you can get what I'm talking about. But I want to make sure I get these signs in. The common signs of abuse in a relationship is that one of the partners prevents contact and communication with family and friends. And that's one we hear about a lot, is that they prevent contact and communication with friends and family. It's all about that control thing. They control money and important identifications such as driver's license and passports. They want to be the holder of those things. They cause embarrassment with calling bad names and putting you down. And for me, that started in the relationship. And, I was like, okay, this doesn't feel right, but I just didn't think to call it or see it as abuse. Critical about survivors' appearance or behavior. And I also know a lot of people who have gone through this kind of stuff too. They attempt to control what their partner wears. I had a girlfriend once who her husband was just relentless, just on her about everything she wore. Like the shirt that I have on right now, it wouldn't have been okay with him. She could be completely covered up, not showing any kind of anything, and he would have an issue. It's too tight. Why do you want to go out here and embarrass me like that? All sorts of things like that. But he was very controlling about what she wore. Yes. Okay. So you can relate to this story. Seeing your friend go through that. Has unrealistic expectations, like the partner being available at all times. In my situation, it was like that person wanted to make me responsible for their happiness all the time and wanted me to be there all the time. And that's just not my world. That's not who I am. I travel, I speak, I work with teenage girls. I was not a homebody. And so that expectation that I would always be there was just very unrealistic. If you have kids, like they're threatening to take away or hurt the children. They act like the abuse is not a big deal, or they deny it's even happening. So if you call them on it, and, I used to always say, you're being a bully. You're acting like a bully. And no, that's not what I'm doing. Yes, it is what you're doing. You're trying to bully me. plays mind games to place blame on the survivor. So they'll, like I said, play these mind games to try to make it think that it's you, not them. If I would try to point something out, I was told things like, oh, you're so high and mighty, you're Miss Perfect, you think you're sitting up here on this pedestal and all this kind of stuff to divert. Oh, please share. To divert the attention away from themselves. Destroys property or threatens to kill pets if you have pets. Went through so much, holes in the wall, throwing things, slamming doors and cabinets and all that kind of stuff, is using these fear tactics to gain control of you is another sign. And here's one that I know happens a lot. The person threatens to commit suicide. Have that as well. It's a scare tactic. It's all to gain control and make you want to stay, make you think they're going to do something to themselves, make you feel sorry for them. It's all a mind game. So often it can be difficult to identify what types of abuse and what constitutes each type of abuse. So I want to go through those too, as far as the physical, sexual, emotional, economic is one that I didn't mention, and psychological abuse. So physical abuse, that's the one we kind of recognize the most, is defined as any use of force that causes pain or injury, as such as hitting, slapping, shoving, grabbing, pinching, biting, and hair pulling, etc. And what's interesting about this physical one is, in my mentoring program one time, I did a questionnaire with my girls, my teenage girls, asking them, I had a list of things and asked them to mark true or false as to whether or not they thought these things constituted abusive behavior. And it scared me so bad, the ones that they were willing to accept and say were not abusive behavior. Somebody pushing them, or like punching them in the shoulder, or grabbing them and pulling them. They thought of that stuff, as not a big deal. And so we really had to have a conversation about what's good and bad in relationships at that age, because like I said, I always say bad behavior unchecked becomes abusive behavior, even in our young men and women. Okay, so sexual abuse is defined as a coercing or attempting to coerce any sexual contact or behavior without consent. Sexual abuse includes, but certainly is not limited to, marital rape, attacks on sexual parts of the body, forcing sex after physical violence has occurred. 19, and she was abused in a relationship. Oh gosh, that just hurts my heart so much. So these things can happen within relationships on the sexual side as well. Emotional abuse is defined as any pattern of behavior that causes emotional pain that can include constant criticism, diminishing one's abilities, name calling, being unfaithful, or damaging one's relationship with their children. So if you have kids and that partner is always telling your kids your mom is so stupid or can't do anything right, calling them out their name, all kinds of stuff like that is all on the emotional side. And being emotionally neglected is also on that list. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. But yeah, so the emotional abuse includes those things, all the criticism and everything, just trying to really tear your self-esteem, your level of self-esteem down, and make you feel like you are not of value, which is totally untrue. Economic abuse, making or attempting to make an individual financially dependent by maintaining total control over financial resources. I've seen this happen to people as well. Women who, and I'm going to talk about women, because that's my platform and that's my audience, women who have no idea what things cost, how much is paid, would not be able to sustain themselves if they left or if the husband died or anything like that, not having any knowledge of the financial situation that's going on in their household. Psychological abuse, psychological abuse elements include but are not limited to causing fear by intimidation, threatening physical harm to self. If I'm going to do this to myself, I'm going to do that to myself if you don't do X, Y, Z. Threatening that same thing to the partner, the children, or the partner's family, destruction of pets and property. So really just trying to get into your mind and play mind games with you to make you think, that they're going to do all these things. So if you guys are still with me, it looks like I keep freezing a little bit, but let me know if you can still see me, hear me okay. If you can tap some hearts on the screen, that'd be great. I hope you guys are still in the room. I can see some people are still in the room, but it looks like Periscope is freezing up a lot. But anyway, I'm going to keep going, and hopefully if you missed something, you can come back to the replay. So here's some more signs that you are in an abusive relationships, and some questions that you can ask yourself. So do you feel afraid of your partner most of the time? Do you avoid certain topics out of fear of angering your partner? Sort of like walking on eggshells. I did a lot of walking on eggshells, trying not to upset the other individual. Do you feel that you can't do anything right for your partner? Do you believe that you deserve to be hurt or mistreated? Do you wonder if you are the one who's crazy? There was sometimes I'm like, is it me? And I had to check that, it's like, no, it's not me. Do you feel emotionally numb or helpless? Does your partner humiliate or yell at you? Does your partner criticize you and put you down? Does your partner treat you so badly that you're embarrassed for your friends and family to see? Does your partner ignore or put down your opinions or accomplishments? Never can celebrate anything that you do. They look at it as, you just think you're so high and mighty, and the people outside here might think you're so great and wonderful, or some of the things that I was told may think you're so great and wonderful, but I know you type of thing. Blame you for their own abusive behavior. And do they see you as property or a sex object rather than as a person? Your partner's violent behavior or threats. So does your partner have a bad and unpredictable temper, always flying off the handle? Mine could go from 0 to 150 in a matter of minutes. Does your partner hurt you or threaten to hurt or kill you? Do they threaten to take your children away or harm them? I had a young lady that I helped to write her story recently. She wrote a book called Surviving the Bridge. That's what it was called. So I mentored her through the process of writing her book. And real quick, her story is about her 3-year-old son. Her boyfriend at the time, her son's dad, was angry at her and took her 3-year-old son and threw him off of the Key Bridge. And you may remember that story from years ago. She just finished writing it, and it just went to print. But it's called Surviving the Bridge. Horrible story, but he was threatening to hurt her child, and she didn't really think that he would do it because he really loved his son so much. But guess what? He did it because he hated her more than he loved his son. How about that? We got to take it seriously. Do they threaten to commit suicide if you leave? So that one again. forcing you to have sex, destroying your belongings are all signs. Here's the controlling behavior. Does your partner act excessively jealous or possessive? Do they control where you want to go or what you want to do? Do they keep you from seeing your friends and your family? Do they limit your access to money, the phone, or the car? And are they constantly checking on you, texting you? Where are you? You said you're going to be home at 7. It's 7:20. Why aren't you here? Where are you? You're not answering your phone type thing. Just always constantly checking up on you. And in this point, abusers use a variety of tactics to manipulate you and exert their power. So one of them is dominance. Abusive individuals need to feel that they are in charge of the relationship. They will make the decisions for you and your family, tell you what to do, and expect you to obey without question. That's dominance. Another tactic that they use is humiliation. An abuser will do everything he or she can do to make you feel bad about yourself or defective in some way. They try to make you seem like you're worthless. Isolation is another tactic. In order to increase your dependence on him or her, an abusive partner will cut you off from the outside world. I hear this a lot when I talk to women who have been in abusive situations. Threats. The abuser commonly uses threats to keep their partner from leaving or to scare them into dropping charges. This is another one. I had a young lady recently who was she was assaulted by her cousin. They lived in the same household, and he hit her while she was holding her 4-month-old daughter, hit her, knocked her on the floor, ended up fracturing something in her neck, and she was pressing charges against him, and then her family started rising up against her, saying you need to just let it go. And I'm like, no, you don't need to just let it go, because once again, bad behavior left unchecked becomes abuse. So no, she doesn't just need to let it go, but family will rise up, and make you think that you're the one that's not the victim, that you're the one who's in the wrong for trying to hold the person accountable that's victimizing you. Intimidation is another tactic. So your abuser may use a variety of intimidation tactics designed to scare you into submission. So such tactics include things as threatening looks or gestures, smashing things in front of you, destroying property, hurting your pets, putting weapons on display, trying to send a clear message to you that if you don't obey, that there will be violent consequences. Like I said, I went through the throwing things and putting holes in the walls and all this kind of nonsense. And it kind of wasn't working with me. I'm a pretty strong woman, and so I'm not easily intimidated. But really, you have to, I talked yesterday about when is enough enough. You have to decide when enough is enough. And it's I don't want to say funny, but in the situation that I was in, I at one point had to get my son and my teenage son and leave the house because he was in my husband was in a violent rage and, was yelling and screaming and slamming things. And I just felt like it was an unsafe environment. It was 11:30 at night and I had to get out, take my son, and we had to go to a hotel. And it was at that point that I knew enough was enough, that this was not going to be my life and I was not going to risk it getting any worse than it already was. And so when I sat down to talk to a dear friend and mentor of mine, and I was telling her, I said, that night I felt like I was an abused woman. And she looked at me and she said, you are an abused woman. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that's when I had to really redefine what abuse was. And so that's why my topic tonight, if abuse knocked at your door, would you recognize it? Because like I said, a lot of times we think if we're not being hit, we're not being abused, but that's not always the case. So the last tactic is denial and blame. Abusers are very good at making excuses for the inexcusable. They will blame their abuse and violent behavior on a bad childhood, a bad day, or even the victims of their abuse. They may minimize the abuse or deny that it even occurred. They will commonly shift the responsibility to you, and I had that to happen a lot. It was always my fault. If you would just spend more time, or if you were here and you weren't out helping those women, or you weren't doing this or that, then we'd be okay. But no, the fact is, that there's a deeper underlying issue with you that's unresolved, and your reaction to things is not what a common, or what not a normal reaction. So but if the person is unwilling to recognize that, then they try to shift the blame on you. So I've covered a lot here, and thank you. Darn, the name scrolled off the screen too fast, so I couldn't see who that was. But thank you so much for being in the room. And I've shared a lot of information here. And the most importantly, if you want to see more, is it Kama Speaks? I hope I'm saying that right. Thank you so much. But so very importantly, I want to say, a lot of this information that I've shared can be found. Okay, awesome. So a lot of information that I've shared can also be found on helpguideorg, which is a domestic violence and awareness website. And then, of course, if you yourself are in a situation, awesome, thanks for the hearts. If you yourself are in an abusive situation, I want to give the National Domestic Violence Hotline number, which is 1-800-799-SAFE. So it's 1-800-799-7233. I hear a lot of people, when the topic of abuse comes up, they'll say things like, well, why does I just started my nonprofit. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for your work, and I wish you all the best in that, but, oh man, what's your site again? The site that I just gave was helpguide.org, and that's a domestic violence site. It's not my personal site, but it has a lot of information on there about recognizing the signs of abuse, and the different types of abuse, because all abuse is not physical. And then I forgot what else I was saying before I started talking. See, I get sidetracked on comments, but anyway, so if you find yourself in a situation like that, that's what I was saying. A lot of people will say about women that are in abusive relationships, well, why didn't they just leave? Well, why would you stay in that situation? But I recognize that it is not always so easy. You cannot really just kind of up and walk away from those situations, because a lot of women who try to leave end up dead. And so that's probably at the forefront of most of their minds. And it's not always so easy to pick up and leave, walk away from everything that you're so familiar with. With my situation, it wasn't physical, it was emotional and psychological. However, I did recognize that if I left it unchecked, that it could have the potential to become physical, and I wasn't willing to wait around that long. And so I chose to walk away from that situation, but it was not an easy decision. And I also had to come up with a plan to leave, so that it was a safe way for me and my children to exit. I had to come up with an exit strategy, if you will. And I walked away from, my beautiful home and my beautiful neighborhood, my beautiful neighbors, and it's not always so easy to pick up and do that. And also walked away from, his 6-figure income as well. And so, I started over essentially. And for a lot of people, it's just not that easy to do that. But even though it's not easy, I do not suggest that anybody stay in an abusive relationship because they think there's no way out, because there There are ways to get help. You just have to be smart about what you're doing, and you have to come up with a smart plan, a great exit strategy, and always keeping your safety first, your children's safety first. Not doing anything so risky that it's going to get you killed. You have to be strategic about your plan and get out of the situation. Thank you so much, Kama. Yeah, you really do have to come up with that plan. Don't get yourself hurt, any more than you already have been. We want you alive, coming out alive, not coming out in a body bag. So, recognize the signs, guys. Take a look at the information, put this on replay, go back and listen to it before it disappears, and listen to those signs again, and figure out if this is something you're experiencing, and then come up with that exit strategy to get you out of there, because I promise you, you are not, you are valuable. You are valuable. Don't let anybody tell you that your life is worth nothing. Don't let anybody tell you over and over again that you suck. Don't let anybody tell you that you're worthless. Don't let anybody tell you that nobody else is ever going to want you. You're all used up. All of those things are lies. They're lies. They're lies. Get out of the situation, but be smart about it. Be so smart about it so that you can live to tell your story. Okay. I love you guys. If you have questions, I'm here. If you have something you want to share, I'm right here. That's why my nonprofit is called Loving Me First. I love it, Kama. I really love that. It starts with you. Absolutely. We have to first love ourselves. We really have to love ourselves. And that's why I'm saying, if you've been torn down so much, you begin to doubt that. But I'm telling you today that you are valuable, that people do love you, that people do care about you. You are amazing. Despite what anybody tells you that's contrary to that, the word of God says that, you are valuable. You are valuable, that your value actually is far above rubies, right? So, don't let anybody tell you any different. And a lot of times when the negative was being spewed and thrown against me, I would always say, my comeback was always, I believe what God says about me. I believe what God says about me. That was my comeback. And I had to keep that hidden in my heart. And I would also verbalize it. I believe what God says about me. So you can't tear me down because I believe what God says about me. Okay? Fearfully and wonderfully made. If you don't know what God says about you, go to the Word of God and look it up. Google it. What does God say about me? Google is everybody's friend. But really, you have to believe and know that you are valuable, because you really are, and you are lovable, and you are a great human being capable of doing fabulous and fantastic things. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't let anybody instill your internal joy. If your self-esteem is being torn down, that's not what love is all about. That's not what love is all about. So I know I'm like on my soapbox. Thanks so much for the hearts, guys. Kama, I wish you all the best with your organization. It is so needed. Our young girls and women need to hear messages like this over and over and over again, so they do not accept bad behavior and let it become abusive behavior. So that's my scope for tonight. Thank you so much for the hearts. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope that this was helpful. Oh, you're welcome, Kama. I hope that this was helpful to you guys. And I'll be back soon. I think, what's my next scope? I said I was going to do something like 40 ways to improve yourself, or something like that. And I might come back and do that later on this evening, or even tomorrow morning. But anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I appreciate the hearts. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you. You are valuable. I love you guys, and I'll check in with you soon. Take care. Success Coach Kimberly checking out. Peace. Love ya.